Net Plus, for some people, it will be difficult. For others, if you're someone that's been networking for a while, some of the stuff will probably come easy because it's mostly just about the concepts and just understanding, understanding the objectives more than being able to apply them. And I don't say that lightly. It's just in comparison to other exams. Cisco is a lot more hands-on with networking concepts than Net Plus is. Even though Net Plus is hands-on, you have to be able to not only know why you would see in a people address, but understand like the results of that, right? What are the symptoms up in the people address, and then what's the most likely reason that you have in the people address, right? And how do you fix it, right? What are some of the things that you can do to fix it? Okay, so there is you do have to be able to apply the concepts, but what I'm saying is in comparison to Cisco, right? You just have to understand, okay, well, maybe there's something wrong with the DHCP server, okay? When you get to Cisco, you have to be able to configure a DHCP pool and verify that it's configured correctly. And then if you have a problem with it, okay, how do I fix it? You have to be able to troubleshoot as well. So, from a hands-on perspective, Cisco is just much more required from a knowledge perspective than Net Plus. Okay? But a lot of the concepts, they drag over, they carry over. Right? Networking is kind of networking. There's different levels to it. So, with that said, I forgot what we were talking about last week. I think we went into some. I think we were on 1.3 a bit, right? We talked a little bit about like broadcast domains, collision domains. I think we talked a little bit about physical versus logical setup, right? Having all of your end devices connected to one VLAN in one access point, right? One switch versus having multiple switches, but even though the equipment is connected to the same switch, it's still in different broadcast domains, right? So VLANs, talked a little bit about trunking. I didn't go too deep into it, right? But trunking is just basically how you allow the different VLANs to traverse the connection, right? So I think we talked a little bit about routing protocols too. Let me go check. Was anyone here who remembers what we talked about last week? I'm going to check the replay section. That should give us a good idea. Okay, yeah, we talked a little bit about collision broadcast domains versus. Okay, yeah, so that's what we were talking about last week. That's what I remember anyway. Are there any questions about this before we move on to another section? What was covered last week, or just this stuff in general? Some people may not have been here last week. So, like I said, this stuff also comes up in Cisco. Net Plus is really just about understanding, okay, what's a collision domain versus a broadcast domain, right? Or, physical versus logical setup. What's the definition of a VLAN? Cisco, you have to be able to configure VLANs, right? You have to be able to physically do this stuff to really feel comfortable with it. Because the troubleshooting questions on Cisco, they're a lot more detailed. There's a lot more depth to them. So, but okay, so everyone's good on that. Okay. Let's see. All right. Okay. So what areas come to mind today for you networkers? how many people will be taking the exam pretty soon? Friday, so next Friday, hopefully, not today. October. Okay, so it's gonna be next week, right? Got a couple taking it next week. Okay, Brian said he has until January. That's plenty of time. Okay, so for those of you that are going to be taking it next week, right, Clinton, Renee, what are some of the areas you feel are still have you a bit confused, or do you feel comfortable with it? Do you feel like you can go in and knock it out if you took it today? It's always a good feeling. Scattered. Okay.
I feel pretty comfortable, just not sure what to expect as far as the performance-based scenarios. What are some things that we might see there?
Okay. So here's the best way to see that. All right. So I can tell you what I saw my last couple of Net Plus exams. Okay. And one thing that I've noticed with these CompTIA exams over the years, now that I've taken a couple of research, is they do kind of carry over a decent, I don't want to say a decent amount, but I can tell you this, like I see questions on the exam that I'm pretty sure I saw on the last exam. So there's quite a bit of turnover, but there's also, there's going to be some new stuff, but there's a bit of carryover, especially with the performance-based questions. So one of the ones that I saw, okay, that I saw on both on the 005 and the 006 is a wireless access point placement question. Okay, so they gave me multiple access points. I think there was 3 on both of them. Okay, they're in the same building, right? You basically stand up a multiple access point network, and they give you all the information that you need, right? So as far as like the SSID, the encryption that they want you to use, right? The passkey, passphrase, whatever they want to call it. Okay, so it's just up to you to make sure that you put all the access points, you configure them correctly so that they're not going to interfere with each other, right? You want to maximize the amount of signal that you're getting inside the building, and you want to minimize the signal outside the building. So let me see if I can, because normally what you can do is you can find here in the objectives an example of one of the questions. But all right, so let me show you a resource that kind of helps with that. Okay. Net Plus Simulator, this shouldn't be new to anyone. I use this resource quite a bit when we're talking about networking, but okay, so if I come here to wireless technologies and then this wireless antenna placement one, okay, this gives you a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, this is a little bit more, I guess,
is
generic.
it probably going to be like a drop and drag type of question?
It could be. This one is.
Okay.
The one that I saw, it was more, the access points were already where they were supposed to be. I had to click on them and I had to configure them. Okay, so this one's more about kind of just placement. Okay, so one, you have to know your different antennas. Okay, you have to know which way they transmit, and you have to know, the appropriate placement for those. Okay, so, and then the other thing that you want to make sure that you're checking for, especially on the one that I'm describing, is your channels. Okay, if you have multiple access points, let's say that you have one huge building right here, right? And I have, I said I have 3. I have 3 access points, right? And they're pretty, they're pretty close to each other, close enough to where you're going to get some overlap. Okay, so the main thing that I had to make sure that I did on that particular question was, make sure that you're not setting up 2 similar channels too close to each other, right? So you can use 11 over here. You can even use 11 over here if you want to, because this is a little bit too far for them to overlap. But you don't want to use it in the middle. If you're using it over here, or you're using it over here, you don't want to use it in the middle. Okay, so
the only channels
really,
we have to pick from are 1, 6, and 11, correct?
that's right.
Yeah.
There's other channels, but these are the ones that
They'll never overlap.
exactly. So that's the main thing. Just make sure you pay close attention to the information that they give you. As far as the SSID, you know, make sure you don't mess that up. And then just make sure that they're not going to interfere with each other. Okay, so that's, you know, that's an example of one. Another one for Net Plus that they can give you is a subnetting one, right? So they can give you a few different departments. You know, I mean, give you one like logical or one physical setup, right? And say, okay, we have we have 3 departments, right? We have a sales department, we have marketing, and acquisitions, whatever. 3 different departments, and you need to segment the network, right? We want to make the network more efficient. So they could ask you to split it up and say, okay, in acquisitions, we need 50 hosts. And in marketing, we need 12 hosts, right? In sales, we need 100 hosts, okay? Which slash are you going to use, you know, to accommodate each segment, okay? So
if you need 4 networks, then you'd be using a /26 probably.
For which department?
Okay, I guess that's where I'm kind of because I get how to subnet. I know how to, you know, find out the first address, the broadcast address, all that. I got all that.
Mm-hmm.
But when they say, okay, well, here's, you know, company A needs, there's 4 departments, and you got to give certain IP addresses to each department.
Mm-hmm. So
what's the quickest way to set that up?
Okay. Let me pull up my document here. I brought it up, so I gotta talk about it, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So right now, forget about learning how to do all this, right? I just want to give you an interpretation of what I mean. Okay. So, all right. Let's say that, all right, they give you this subnet here. Okay. They give you this subnet block, right? /24 is going to give you 256 addresses, right? Of those 256, 254 are usable as hosts, right? Everyone's with me on that? I don't have to explain that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is your block, 256 and then 254, all right? What they're saying is, all right, we have 3 different departments, right? We have marketing here, we have sales, and then we have IT, right? Marketing needs 60 hosts, right? And so your first block, you're gonna block off for 60 hosts, okay? Starting at, right, this is your first address right here, right? This is your first non-usable, right? This is the subnet ID, right? Your 1.0. So the first usable would be 1.1, right?
Right.
Okay. So since we need 60, what we're going to do is we're going to block off the first 60, who knows how many, right? Well, okay, so it's already here, right? We're using a /26, right? Why are we using a /26?
Because it gives us 4 networks with 64 available addresses.
Right. Well, right now we're not splitting up. We're not splitting up into networks. We're just splitting up. We need 64 addresses, right? /26 is going to be 64. So that's why the first block is going to go to marketing. So 1.1 all the way through 1.63 is reserved just for marketing. Okay. And then for sales, all we're going to do is we're just going to use a different slash for sales because we only need 30 here, right? So for sales, we need 30. So instead of using 26, 27 will work, right? Because
okay, I didn't think it was that easy, but I guess I see it a different way now. I get it.
Yeah, it is. It's really that easy. It may not be that easy for someone else listening, but I mean, if you get it, if you get subnetting, then yeah, it's that simple. It's just about, you have a whole block here and you're just splitting it up, right? So marketing gets the first 64, and then you just block off the second block for sales. You need 30, right? Third block, same thing, right? Because as long as we have enough addresses here, then we're good, right? I mean, we may need, let's say that we needed more than 254. Let's say we needed 300 hosts, right? Well, then this wouldn't be enough, right? We'd have to make this a slash 23. Slash 23 would give us, does anyone know off the top of their head?
128 networks with 2 addresses.
No, if we're going backwards, so I added another hosting.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay, so hold on.
So you're basically doubling, right? So this is 256 right now, right? At slash 24. So let's say that in this instance,
512
plus 30 plus 120 plus 100 is not more than 256. But let's say that we did need more, right? So I would have to change this block, and then we would double this, right? I think you did say it, right?
512.
Yeah, that would double this. So then you would have 512 here, and then of that 512, 510 would be available as host, right? And then you just do the same thing. You start with one department, and you just, you block off whatever you need for that one department, and then you just keep going. So I blocked off, the first block for marketing is 1.0 through 1.63, right? Where does the next subnet start for sales?
64.
For the next department. Yeah, it's already here, so this usually cheats you, I guess. But yeah, so you just start 164, and then this next block right here is reserved for sales only, right? 164 through 1.95. And then the same thing. So the next one here will start where?
They need 100.
168, 1.
96 through 196.
No, because we need 100 hosts, but what would be the next? What would be the next block, right? So 64. So this is 32, right? This will give you 32 addresses. That's why we can use this for sales. This will give you 64, right? What's 64 times 2?
128.
There you go. So the next block will be, no, when you just add, 128 to this, right?
Right.
And then there you go. So you get it now?
Yeah.
If you get a question like that, what they're mainly going to be asking you for is this. They're going to want to know that that this gives you 64 addresses and 64 hosts. This gives you 32 addresses and 30 hosts, right? And then here you would use the, what will we use here? For 128, we would use a slash 28? No. Yeah, it would be, right? It would be a slash 28. 24, 28. We need 100 addresses. This one. Charts at the top, right? So for 100, slash 25. There you go. I was going up for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah. So for slash 25 for 100 devices, right? And that'll give us an excess of 128. Okay. Now one other thing. I don't know if they're going to do this or not. I've heard of some students getting this, but this was on the last version of the exam. Okay. There are some instances where they can ask you how many addresses are left over, right? After you've used up your block, right? And that's pretty simple. All you do is you just add up the amount. Don't add up the amount of hosts that you need. Add up the amount of addresses that you blocked out. All right. So for this first department for marketing, we didn't block out 60 addresses. We blocked out 64, right? So 64, And then in the second, we blocked out 32, right? Not 30, we blocked out 32, right? And then on the third, we blocked out 128. So you just add up, right? You take the amount of addresses that you started with, right, which is 256, and then you subtract you add up these and then you subtract it. So 64 plus 32 plus 128, right, equals 224. So you take 256 and then you subtract 224, right? Then that leaves you with, this is how many remaining addresses you have, okay? I'm not sure that they're gonna ask you this, but just in case they do, just know that if when you're adding, you're counting the blocks. You're not counting the amount of hosts. Okay, so don't count 30, 100, and 60. Count the blocks. The total amount of addresses that you blocked off. Okay? Is everyone with me on that?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Hey, they don't let you use a calculator, do they, for the sake of saving time?
No. You're not going to have a calculator. So I'm assuming that they're not going to give you this. I mean, that would just waste time if you have to sit here and try to add this and hope that you get it right. Okay, but I remember some students saying that on the 006. I took the 006 and they didn't ask me this. I didn't get any subnetting on the 006. So, but just in case, I just wanted to FYI you guys. If they do, just make sure you're adding up the blocks.
Hey, Tristan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've taken it. So, but yeah, you're gonna have the subnetting questions like Tristan is explaining, and to answer the guy's question about the calculator, what have you, Tristan, you got that little kind of like a cheat sheet, just having the different the bits up there, so you can have your little chart. So that's probably one of those things that you want to memorize and so that way you can write on your scratch paper that they give you, so you can just kind of use that. And so you don't have to do too much. That right there. So if you can memorize that and write it down for yourself, then you'll be squared away.
Right, Professor Messer. If you ever watched his 7-second subnetting, I got that chart memorized. I plan on using that one and then this one right here that Tristan's got on the screen right now.
Yeah. So whichever one works for you, that's how it goes. But like Tristan was saying, it's mainly what they're going to ask you are like the number of hosts available, usable addresses type, a range, or the first or the last, stuff like that. So if you're able to add and subtract those different deals based on what they give you as far as the bang 26 or whatever, then you'll be fine. And if I can remember correctly, I think there was around about maybe 3 subnetting questions on there. So, but that was the one I took it in December of this last year. So, but it's just one of those things where you just have to, if you're comfortable with that and you're comfortable with getting that chart, then you should do fine. Because that's pretty much it. I mean, the thing is, the question might be long and drawn out, but that's basically what they're asking you is about the host, and then being able to, just like I said, subnet and get those, just get them right and just get that range.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff, Kareem. Yeah, I've heard good things about Professor Messer's 7-second subnetting chart. That one works. If you have it memorized, then good. I always put this at the top. Anytime I'm taking a networking exam, where they could ask me questions on CIDR, I always put this chart at the top, so I don't even have to. I pretty much have this memorized too, just because of repetition. I've talked about subnetting a lot over years, so a lot of this stuff I don't really need, but it's better just to have it, so I don't even really have to think about it. I just, okay, yeah, that one. And then just FYI, when it comes to host, they're not going to have you like way down here, and it's going to be somewhere like around this area between like /23 and up here. They're going to keep it simple. They just want to make sure that you understand the concept. So don't think that you're going to be trying to figure out what slash am I going to use for like 2,000, or 2,000 is right here, but like 10, 20, 30,000 hosts and things like that. They're not going to have you way down in like /16 area. Hopefully.
I will. Exactly. I'm going to Same thing with Tristan. Yeah, it's 23, maybe a 22 at the most, but yeah, 23 down. That's where that's gonna be your range roughly.
Right. So, okay. Any other questions on sub? Oh yeah, one other thing. Okay. Make sure you understand the concept of excluded addresses. Right. We talked a little bit about it. You can't use your host and you can't use your broadcast. So another thing that they can ask you is your first and your last usable address. Okay. Pay very close attention to that because a lot of people may get confused by that. They see what's the first address and then they'll put the subnet ID. If it says first usable, make sure you pick the one after the subnet ID. Same with the broadcast. If they ask for the last usable, it's the one before the broadcast. Okay. Don't miss those easy ones. You need everyone that you can get. So other than that, I don't think that they ask you too much more when it comes to subnetting. Just know which flash you're going to use for a certain amount of hosts, and then just understand which addresses fit in a certain range. So if they give you a certain address, like 0.5, just know which range it fits in. If they give you a subnet mask, like this is enough information to tell you like which range it's in. Because this really right here is giving you the range. Other than that, I don't want to get into subnetting. Every time we get into it, it's an endless pit, and we end up I look up and the time is over. So time is up. Okay. What else do we have? OSI model. Okay, good. Glad you brought it up. Okay, so for the OSI model, what you want to do is your focus should be on the devices, the applications, the protocols, and the services, right? It says it right here, that are operating at the layers. Okay, outside of that and putting this in order, you're not going to see much in the OSI model. Okay, so they may say which layer is a switch operating at, or maybe TCP or UDP. Okay, IPsec, right? If it has IP in it, more than likely it's operating at the network layer. Okay, if you see something like IPsec or routers, they're operating at layer 3. Okay, the one that a lot of people get confused on is the multi-layer switch, right? They want to say that it operates at layer 3. It really operates at both layers. It's a switch it's a hybrid switch. It just has routing capabilities depending on what it's doing. If it's just directing traffic within the network, then it's using layer 2, right? That's MAC address stuff. If you're using it to, right, so for Kareem, right, you can use a layer 3 switch to connect your VLANs, right? If you don't have a router, you can use a layer 3 switch to connect your VLANs. You have to use switch virtual interfaces to SVIs, right? Hopefully you got there. If you haven't, then write it down. But when it's doing that, when it's connecting VLANs, it's operating at layer 3, right? But it doesn't have a specific layer, right? So it's not just that it operates at layer 3. It just kind of depends on what it's doing. Okay, so don't get confused by that. Putting these in order, one thing that you can do is there's a couple acronyms. I think Professor Messer, the one I learned from Professor Messer, is if you're going from bottom to top, hold on. I have a graphic. I have a really good graphic that I posted in the forum a while ago, so I want to use that. This will definitely help. Let me get out of here. So under CompTIA, network, all right, you're gonna have to scroll down for a while till you see a OSI model graphic. Okay, it's down here. Okay, this is a good thing to study because it kind of gives you everything kind of mapped out and visual, right? It has a nice little visual with it, and then you have like the ports and protocols and stuff over here. Okay, if you're going from top to bottom, all people seem to need data processing. Okay, if you can remember that, then you'll be able to put these in order. All right, from top to bottom. If you're going from bottom to top, please do not throw sausage pizza away. Okay, those are the ones that I remember. There's a couple other ones. Use whatever one works for you. Okay, but this model right here, this will give you. This is a good thing to study because it has everything mapped out, and you actually have a visual here, right? So, yeah, there you go. Kelly has it. So, very good question. The way that they're going to test you is they're going to throw like some protocols, or they're going to throw some hardware at you, or services, and then they're going to say, okay, which layer is this operating at? Okay, that's about it. And then the other thing is they may say, this is operating at layer 3. Which layer is that? So make sure you can associate a number with the actual name. Make sure you know that layer 4 is the transport layer, layer 3 is the network layer. Okay. And then the other thing that they can do is bits, frames, right? So make sure you know that at layer 1, you're talking about bits, right? And you can see that right here, right? You see zeros and ones, right? 0, 1, 0, 1. You know, you're just talking about like binary bits. Okay. Data link, you're talking about frames, right? So that's your MAC address stuff, your physical addresses, right? Your physical address, you can see it right here. Okay. Bits, frames. When you get to network, you're talking about packets. All right, this is your packets up here. Okay, and just think of, you know, IP. When you think of packets, think of IP. All right, and that should help you there. All right. Then when you get to transport layer, you're talking about segments. All right. So that's another thing that they can ask you about. They can say, okay, which layer are you dealing in segments? Which layer are you dealing in frames, right? In physical addressing. All right. So those are the main things that you need to watch out for when it comes to the OSI layer. All right. Or the OSI model.
Hey, Tristan.
Yeah.
Can I add on? Because for the folks of Renee and the other guy, have you guys taken this exam at all?
No, this will be my first shot.
Okay, and what, Tristan, if you don't mind, I'll piggyback on what you're saying about what they'll ask. But like I said, you got to understand that it's like, they're not going to ask you as simply as, hey, what's blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a scenario, and it might be a long, drawn out, you know, just like a paragraph sometimes. And it's just more like in, you know, technical terms, as if you're a tech, you know, like, hey, you got this going on, that type of stuff. So just by thinking definitions is one thing, but to be able to apply that to a scenario is where you want to have your mind set for. Because I think if you do that, you'll be able to recognize it. But if not, and you're looking for definition type terms, and then you go ahead and plug and play, you're not going to see that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. But what you will see is a lot of times you're going to see a keyword, something in there that kind of separates one answer from the others. Because a lot of the times, especially with the scenario based and the troubleshooting questions, you'll see multiple answers that could all fit just depending on the scenario. So when you see those, when you see something that has, you know, like ping and trace route in it, or, you know, something that has like TCP and UDP, right? Both transport protocols, but you have to know the difference between them. One's connection oriented and the other one isn't, right? So when you look down in the answers and you see those, you have to go back up and then look up and see, okay, are they talking about a connection oriented protocol, or do they just need to send and forget, right? So make sure that you look for those. And a lot of times in my experience, especially the last couple of exams that I took, I've seen a lot of keywords. And normally what they do is it'll be like all caps. So it does kind of stand out in the paragraph. But you still have to be able to kind of correlate it and make sure that you understand, you know, the difference between TCP and UDP, or it won't matter, right? You'll be guessing anyway. So yeah, it's a very good point that he brought up. A lot of the questions, there's a bunch of useless information in them. So the trick is to be able to dissect the paragraph and find, okay, what is it that you need and what doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter that you're on you left on Friday and it was a 3-day vacation, right? It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's information that's there, but more importantly, what's the problem and what's the most likely symptom, or what's the symptoms, what's the most likely problem, and then what's the best solution. What's most likely a problem, what's the best solution. That's what you should be thinking on like each question. What's the problem? What are the symptoms? A lot of times they give you the symptoms and you have to figure out the problem, right? Sometimes they give you the problem and you have to tell them what the solution is. But if you keep like those 3 in mind for each problem, for each question, then you should be good, right? Each question there's a symptom, a problem, or a solution. Find which one is missing. It's like an equation, right? Find which one is missing.
Hey Tristan, kind of like when you talk about TCP and UDP, like for instance, if you get a question about like, let's say vonage or audio or something like that, and then you got to know that that's not TCP, right? You're using UDP type stuff, and that's where the difference will come up, something like that, where it's like if you're dealing with a document and you had to send it or some type of data, then that's more than likely going to be TCP, right? So those type of things, that's generally how the questions you'll see them. So that way you'll know the difference between those two, or if you do know, that's what you'll see.
Right. So he makes a good point. It starts with understanding of the information, but then the second part is comprehension of how they're asking you. Because then, like you said, they're not going to ask you cut and dry, like which one of these is this. No, it's going to be in a form of a scenario, and you have to kind of dissect what it is that they're talking about. So yeah, I'm glad that he brings that up. You're going to see that quite a bit on Net Plus. I'm pretty sure you guys have already taken A+. Hopefully you have, right? So it's going to follow the same structure as those A+ exams if you've taken them. For some reason, you see quite a bit of troubleshooting when you get to Net Plus, and it kind of takes some of the concepts that you learn to the next level. So just make sure you're prepared for that. Where are we at here? Okay, we got about 10 minutes. So yeah, are you good on OSI? You have any other questions about that? That's pretty much how they're going to test you on it, because it's really kind of it's kind of an interpretation type of deal, right? There's another model that they took out. It's the TCP/IP model, and it basically takes all of these, but it blends a couple, right? It takes out a couple of them. So it just gives you, there's only 4 layers in that one. So it just kind of gives you it just lets you know that it's an interpretation type of deal. So, they may say, okay, here's another one that you need to be prepared for. Okay, you could possibly see this. They could say, okay, you think that you're having connections with, you're having problems with at the wiring level. Okay, which level is that? Okay, or whatever. They just give you some long, drawn-out scenario, and you think the problem is the wiring. Okay, which layer problem is that? Right, and then they can give you a few: session transport, network, physical, whatever. Be prepared for that, right? If you're having problems at the switch level, which layer are you having problems at? Right, you're having a problem with your router, right? Which layer issue is that? Be prepared for that too. Okay, but it just kind of ties into just knowing like what equipment and what protocols are operating at each layer. If you know that, then that shouldn't be a problem for you.
I will say that the tricky thing when they start talking about switches, if you see them guys, is that they might not always say layer 2 or layer 3, but they may describe what that switch that they're talking about does or doesn't do, and then that's the indicator. So
good stuff. Okay, What else? I'm gonna just, unless anyone has anything else, I want to go to troubleshooting. I think this is the area that most people struggle with, because lack of experience for one, and two, there's troubleshooting down here. It is easy to get thrown off on troubleshooting because this is the area where they throw a lot of things at you that, when you go down to the answers, a lot of them are similar, and sometimes it's hard to pick out the right one. Okay, so here's my advice for troubleshooting. One, read the question, look for the keyword. If there's something that's all caps, key in on it, right, and figure out why. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to give you a hint, at least to where you are in the process. All right, so we're talking about a keyword in troubleshooting. First, okay, they say first. What should you do first? That gives you an indication that you're probably here. You're at the beginning of the process, of the troubleshooting process, right? That tells you that when you go down to those answers, you're looking for the one that's the easiest to do. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a PC that is not connecting, all right, you can't connect to the internet. All right, you turn on your PC, you can't connect to the internet, okay? And they give you this blah, 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 blah. And then you have these, all right, you have these solutions, all right, what do you do? Do you restart the PC? Do you check the adapter settings? Do you check the Wi-Fi? Or do you reboot your router? Okay. If you see first, which out of the ones that I gave you, which is the easiest to do? Kelly says no to the troubleshooting step. Yeah, no. Make sure you can put them in order. But so out of those ones that I just gave you, the easiest thing to do is probably check the Wi-Fi settings, right? You can come down here and see what Wi-Fi is looking like, okay? Or you could go reboot your router, right? Which one is the easiest to do? That's my point. All of the things that I gave you could possibly fix your problem, right? All of those answers could possibly fix the problem. But when you're at the beginning of the troubleshooting process, you're looking for the easiest solution, right? You don't want to reboot your router when maybe all you have to do is just come down here and connect back to your Wi-Fi, right? That's my point. If they tell you next, right, maybe you could still be at the beginning of the process, but more than likely, you're at least here, right? If they say next, you've already done something, right? You've already gathered your information and you have some ideas of what the problem is. So now what's next, right? So pay close attention to those keywords, all right? Another one you can see is best. What's the best solution? What's the most likely cause? Things like that. Okay, that's what's going to separate one from the rest of them when you have those, all right? And you're going to see it quite a bit. You're going to get a question and then you're going to go look at the answers. And you're going to be like, okay, it could be that one. It could be that one. It could be that one, maybe not, but it could be that one too, right? I see it a lot. And then you have to go back to the question and figure out, okay, what is it that they're trying to point me towards? There's always something up there that gives it away. You just have to be able to spot it.
You know what they'll do,
Okay.
Tristan? They'll give you that long scenario, folks, about like, hey, here's the setup, so-and-so department, network went down, but only in these offices. Sue from sales needs her, blah, 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 blah. Look at this long thing. And then meanwhile, it's like, okay, so after you've troubleshot and verified that blah, 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 or something like that, normally you won't even start like at the first level. They'll be already like maybe three in or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of thing. So let's say if you're memorizing just the steps and just kind of thinking it on those terms, just say, hey, if I don't see this, then it's that, then you could probably get thrown off. So in other words, not only do you need to know the steps, but the order, you know what I mean? It's just like, you need to understand that this is where they are in that scenario. And a lot of times you might see something that's like you've identified, you've already done something. Now you need to do blah, 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 what have you. But like I said, they'll get long and drawn out, but you have to get down into the weeds of that final question.
Exactly. Yeah, and knowing the steps is important. Right here, this is the one that you want to be careful with, okay? Because you can go forward or you can go back from here. Once you're testing the theory, you came up with a theory of probable cause, right? I can't connect to the internet. Maybe my Wi-Fi settings aren't working, right? So I go down here and I'm testing the theory, right? It's quick. I come down here and my Wi-Fi looks fine, right? So now I have to come back. That's not what it is. It's not my Wi-Fi settings. It has to be something else, right? So this is where you get to where you can either go forward, right? If your theory proves to be true, then you're going forward from there, right? Now, how do I fix it? Okay. But if you test your theory and it isn't true or it's not the Wi-Fi settings, now you're going back, right? Now you're going backwards, right? I have to establish another theory of probable cause. Okay. So knowing the steps is important. One, know where you are. Okay. This is the middle point right here. Okay. Depending on if your theory was right or not, you're going forward or you're going back. So, okay, just make sure you're ready for that. Okay. What else? Where are we at? Yeah, I gotta get ready to go. Any other questions or concerns?
I got like about a month left before I take mine. I mean, I took it like 5 years ago. I mean, that's 5 years ago. I passed it, but I'm trying to figure out, like, regardless, like, outside of the objectives, is there anything else that I should be covering, really doubling down on this last month? Just this?
No.
Okay.
If it's not in the objectives, they can ask you questions on the exam that aren't part of the objectives, but it's not going to count towards your score.
Okay.
So this is where this is plenty. I want to be looking at anything outside of these objectives. And as a matter of fact, if let's say that you're using like some training online or whatever, if you feel like you're going over something that wasn't covered, make sure it's in the objectives or you're just wasting your time. Really, I mean, the learning kind of gets done after you pass the exam. Like the real learning, it happens when you get to the field, and you start to have those side conversations and you're in an environment where everyone is kind of doing what you've been studying for and stuff, and then that's where you really start to learn the extra stuff. But for testing purposes, I'm not worried about anything that's not on these objectives at all. If it's on the exam, I'm not worried about it. If I miss it, then I miss it. If I know that it's not in the objectives, and the way that you know that is you just studying the objectives. Whenever I'm getting ready for an exam, I'm constantly looking at these things because I want to make sure that I get everything that's in here. I want to make sure that I have at least a general understanding of everything, from the very first objective all the way down to the bottom. I want to make sure that I have a general understanding. If it is a acronym, I want to make sure I know what this is, right? It's a non-disclosure agreement, right?
Right.
Anything outside of these, I don't care about. Not now. I'll learn about it when I get into the field and I'm networking, right? But
hey, Tristan, what about a lot of the graphs? I mean, the charts, excuse me, that we have in here, folks. It's like your frequency ranges and those different things that whether it be you know how things are segmented or what have you, or which ones they're using or what have you. They're gonna set you up like that, but it's gonna be, like I said, long drawn out, and then they're gonna plug in a frequency or whatever the case may be, and or it could be something else when it deals with the networking cable types and things like that. So those things are, like I said, they won't be that bam bam bam, it's this. It'll be a long drawn out scenario, and then you have to be able to know that you're using whatever frequency or cable or whatever the case may be.
right.
It's just that's what makes to me the test that much